Symbols matter. Symbolism is important because symbols teach things, and it's no different in churches. And you can see in our building here, we have a quintessential New England meeting house that doesn't have a lot of decor, not a lot of imagery. And that's because the Congregationalists who built these New England meeting houses didn't care much about images. We had to add the cross later because people would come in off the street wondering whether or not we were a Christian church because there was no cross. But you get the point that people are looking for symbols to teach things. And it was no different in Jesus' day in Jerusalem. And I want you to picture with me him exiting the upper room with his disciples after the Last Supper, where he was walking through the streets of Jerusalem toward the gate that would lead him out to the Garden of Gethsemane, where he would be betrayed. And he would have passed the temple. And Herod's temple had front doors that were so enormous that the golden grapevines carved on the door had grape clusters carved that were so big they were each the size of a full-grown man. Now, why would the doors have such a specific motif on them? And then why would Jesus in this moment, and I'm not saying he necessarily was walking past the door, but he would have in some sense have been, and he said to his disciples the last I am statement before his death, and that is, I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine dresser. Well, it's because when you read the New Testament in light of the Old Testament, what you see is that Israel, God's people, were called the vine of God, God's vineyard. God was a vineyard owner or a vine dresser, and Israel was a vine or a vineyard. And in the context of a lot of the passages that use this metaphor, like Isaiah 5 and Isaiah 27 and Psalm 80, Israel is not producing the fruit God has intended. He did everything he could do, but they were failing to produce fruit, and so God in judgment would destroy the vineyard, rip up the vines, and they would be destroyed. And so here's Jesus saying, I am the true Israel. I am the people of God. I am the true Son of God that is not failing to produce fruit. I am the answer to God's redemptive plan in the Old Testament, where he would plant a vine and fill the whole earth with fruit. That was his plan in the Garden of Eden. This paradise would cover the whole earth. And that's why the temple and the tabernacle had all these horticultural symbols that showed it to be the meeting place of God. It is like a little mini Eden that eventually he would fill the whole earth with his presence. And the earth and his people would bear the fruit of God's blessings. Jesus is the true vine. Only by abiding in him will you bear fruit. And God will prune those people so they'll bear more fruit. And if someone isn't bearing fruit, God will take those branches away. But if you abide in me and my words abide in you, Jesus said, that shows a disciple. When my words abide in him. And the Father is glorified when people bear much fruit and thus prove to be my disciples. And in the context of John 15, Jesus is talking about the fruit that the Holy Spirit will produce in you by being able to remember his words and follow his words and obey his commands. And we'll talk about the fruit of the Spirit specifically in our next video series. Jesus is the true vine. He is God himself. And if you're going to enjoy the life of God, you need to abide in and receive the power from God by being a branch growing out of that vine. Jesus is God. He is divine, and you are the branches. That one was for free. So will you go and bear much fruit and thus prove to be the disciples of Jesus?